On this week's episode of The Rise, we sit down with Ashley Mayer, co-founder and general partner from Coalition. Ashley has lived every side of this game, operating at Box during IPO prep, shaping narrative at Social Capital, helping build Glossier, and now running an operator-led fund designed to give founders real leverage early. We talk about the shift from operator to investor, how to design intentional cap tables, why operator capital works when done right, and how story becomes a competitive advantage long before it shows up in a pitch deck. Let's get into it. Ashley, thanks so much for coming on The Rise.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to jump into it.
All right.
You've touched every part of the venture world. Every part. IPO at Box, shaping Social Capital.
Yep.
Building Glossier.
Yep.
Now you're running an operator-led firm and Coalition.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty cool.
Thank you. I do too.
Just want to start with like the moment it clicked. When did you know that you wanted to be an investor?
I kind of became an investor by accident. So, I mean, I could tell my career story in a way that sounds super intentional, where every piece was leading up to this current moment, or I can tell you the real story.
Give me the real deal.
Which is that when I was at Box, I was lucky to join very early, around 50 people. I led communications there through IPO, which is just like, once you do that, you're hooked. Like, you're never going to leave the startup ecosystem.
What does communications involve? Like that function?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, let's do it. Communications is just telling your story. And now there's like what communications is, and then there's like how the teams are structured, and that can vary from company to company. But communications is all about making sure your most important audiences know who you are, who you're for. And you can do that any number of ways. Those ways are shifting over the past, decade plus that I've been operating and now investing. But at Box, it was all about telling a story that was much bigger than the company and even bigger than sort of our specific category. And it was how cloud and mobile were changing the way businesses worked and changing enterprise IT. So that was our big thing that we had to push. We had to help CIOs, IT buyers, but then also like end users realize that there was like a new way to work and come on board.
I think comms more than ever now. I mentioned this before we started recording.
Yeah.
I think taking control of your own narrative, especially on socials right now, I just think it's critical for founders, for investors, for a lot of folks out there. So I think you're pretty well positioned.
Yeah.
Right?
It's the thing I say, and it sounds overly simple, but I believe it so deeply, is startups are mostly stories about the future. They're stories about what the future could and should be. And your ability to tell that story in a way that gets people excited, that gets them to join your early team, to invest in your company, to be your first customer, that's existential for a startup. And so, we tend to think about, communications is something you layer on once you've built a marketing team, and, there are different channels, but really like at its essence, a startup is a story, and getting people to believe it is like the core thing you have to do, especially early on when there are very few proof points.
I'm curious how, like the pressure cooker that must have been Box at the time has shaped your approach to investing.
Oh, that's such an interesting question. It's funny. I would never consider Box a pressure cooker. Like, I mean, it was intense. And this whole like 996 thing, like, I don't even know what my numbers were, but they were crazy. But it was a place that was so risk on. And there was so much psychological safety. Like, everyone on that team was encouraged to take really big swings. And that includes on the comms team. And so I think I just look for founders with that, especially when it comes to storytelling, but really when it comes to building businesses, people who are taking big swings and who aren't trying to thread the needle or build incrementally. And so I think Aaron Levy and the Box journey were really inspirational for me in that way.
Totally. I think it's also really interesting, just the range in comms from Box into Glossier, I think is really interesting.
They're kind of opposites.
They're kind of opposite, right? But wait, I don't want to skip Social Cap though.
Okay.
So I'm curious.
How did I get there?
How did you get there? How did that happen?
Here's where I get to name drop one of my favorite people. So Mamoon Hamid, who today runs Kleiner,
Let's go.
was at USVP when he invested in Box, and he invested in Box's Series B, which sounds like a growth stage, but it was like a $6 million Series B or something crazy like that. This was in 2019. And I joined shortly after he invested. So I got to know him over the course of his time on the Box board. And then he left USVP at some point. Box was his very first investment. So that's pretty cool. First investment he ever makes ends up going public.
Wow.
He went and started Social Capital with 2 other GPs. And so after Box's IPO, I was starting to think about what I wanted to do next. I knew I wasn't probably going to try to go do the exact same path again because like there was no way I was going to be able to compete with the Box experience. It was so magical and amazing. And I started chatting with Mamoon and he suggested I come over and be Social Capital's first marketing partner.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was really fun. And then like the thing that did for me was I knew I loved telling the Box story. I knew I loved working with Aaron, but that's all, when you're operating, you have a lot of depth, but very little breadth, right? My whole experience of startups was like enterprise software and this one company specifically. And so Social Capital gave me that ecosystem view, right? And really helped me realize how much I love in general, working with founders at the early stages of company building when the startup is mostly a story about the future and helping them figure out how to tell that story in a way that resonates with the people who matter most.
That's amazing. I kind of random, but, or not super random. We did this earlier this year. I started asking folks, this hypothetical, if you could go to any firm right now, like where would you go to?
Yeah.
We like called it the gravity index. And there were some like really interesting themes and signals, but I more recently took it a step further and started asking folks if you could work under any GP in venture today, who would that be? And Mamoon, Alfred, like those.
Wow.
It
well,
is.
I mean, like the track records speak for themselves. For
100%.
Sure. And Mamoon is, I don't know Alfred well. I'm sure he's wonderful. Mamoon's a genuinely good human too. So your survey respondents have good taste.
Amazing. I love hearing the good human part.
Yeah, it matters.
It does matter.
Especially in the long run.
So Glossier, how did they get you?
Yeah, so it's funny. I had decided to leave Social Capital. And the day before my last day, I had coffee with Emily Weiss scheduled through someone who was actually working at Glossier at the time, whom I'd met while I was at Social Capital. And it was really just supposed to like give her some advice on searching for a comms leader, which she had been doing for a while. And like one thing led to another. And she ended up convincing me to move to New York and run comms at Glossier. I was going to take some time off. I was going to try to write like a novel. But instead I ended up moving to New York and working in beauty again, like pretty much the opposite of enterprise software.
I think it's pretty cool that you can pivot like that. I think that's, that's just like mastering your craft and being able to go over.
Yeah, a lot of it was selfish. Like I had never really done consumer communications. Obviously, Box, I did a lot of enterprise software, and there was some of that at Social Capital as well, along with Frontier and healthcare and ed tech. Consumer is a totally different beast. And especially at the time, Glossier was really world-class in consumer brand building, storytelling, creative. Totally. I think when you work in tech, you tend to assume like all the smartest people work in tech. And that is true in some functions. It is not true in all functions. And some of the best brand people actually work in more sort of like the CPG universe. You think the Nikes of the world. And so yeah, I was like selfish and wanted to figure out like how do the best people tell stories that resonate with large consumer audiences, especially in a category like beauty it's actually quite emotional and intimate. So that was a big part of wanting to go there. And also I had never worked for a female CEO before.
Oh, let's go.
And I know the world responds differently to women in positions of power and leadership. And so I was also excited for that communications challenge.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You had a killer run there.
Yeah. I mean, it was wild. It was kind of like the tale of two runs a little bit. Like the first year and a half was all store openings and magazine covers. And then the second half was like the pandemic and store closures and supply chain disruption and navigating all of that. And both were like very important, and I'm so proud of both. But it was a wild time to be leading communications at a company that makes physical products. Very different than, COVID was for companies that build software.
I am a weirdo, and I want to know like every detail you're comfortable sharing on what led up to you starting Coalition.
Yeah. So the seeds of Coalition were planted while I was at Glossier. So after I left Social Capital and started working at Glossier, which was growth stage shortly after I joined, we had like 100 million revenue year. And then after that, raised the first unicorn round. So like really fun, growth stage company. But I really missed working with founders at those like very early stages where you're sort of in the discovery process of like, what is our story? Who are we? Who are we for? And I found that an amazing way to do that was angel investing. In fact, I was kind of pressured into it by a good friend who's now one of my partners at Coalition, Jacqueline Nelson. She'd already been angel investing for a while. She's a phenomenal angel. She's in the seat of Vanta and a bunch of other great companies. And so I started doing that, and I loved that because like really if you're coming in pre-seed, seed stage, sometimes you're one of the first people a founder is even telling their story too. And so yeah, alongside Glossier, I started investing first as an angel. And then alongside the 3 women who've become my partners at Coalition, and the catalyst for that was Thrive wanted to start a scout program. And we were all connected in different ways through our careers, and we pitched them back on let us pool this capital and operate like a little scout fund. And so early 2020, we kicked off doing that alongside our day jobs.
That is pretty special.
Yeah. So that's honestly my like accidental path here.
Yeah.
Which was really just, I love working with early stage founders. And so I wanted to have my cake and eat it too while I was at Glossier. And then over time, it became the thing I wanted to spend all my time on.
I love it. How did you name Coalition?
Oh, man. I wish we had a better story. Here's what I have found. I've named a lot of products in my time. It was one of my favorite things to do at Box. They didn't let me name anything at Glossier, to be clear. I've only named like enterprise software features. But oftentimes the like placeholder name becomes the name. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but the spirit of Coalition is very intentional, which is we believe the best cap tables are collaborative. They're filled with people who have different networks and expertise that can give the founders an unfair advantage. And so when we were building Coalition, even in the early days as angels and scouts, we always wanted to do it with an ecosystem approach. And so who can we bring into this deal who would be the most helpful to this founder? And actually, one thing that was pretty cool is alongside our angel and scout investing, we actually built out an ecosystem of top operators and partner with 2 VC firms, Thrive Capital and General Catalyst, on a model to more scalably bring top operators onto their early stage cap tables where we would do that matching and they would share their economics. So we brought over 100 operators onto cap tables alongside our investing and with these partners. And then when we decided we wanted to build a venture product around this, where we're pairing both capital and active operating expertise, Thrive and General Catalyst both anchored our first fund.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I think that Thrive and GC, both really big funds, but I hear stories all the time of different, like unique ways that they support and engage with the emerging community. And I think that's pretty special about both of those firms.
It's really cool. It's even more fun than that because I think GC was one of the investors that helped put Thrive in business. So they invested early on into Thrive. And then, they both, do a lot for the ecosystem. And I think this is one of these things that's hard to see about venture from the outside. But when you're on the inside, like people know that rising tide lifts all ships. Totally. And like taking an ecosystem approach and cultivating that really helps you in the long run. And so I have a lot of admiration for these larger firms who see that and will take bets early on people. And of course, you're incredibly loyal to the folks who helped you get to where you are. So totally. It's cool. They both do a lot of ecosystem cultivation.
I love it. You at Coalition, guys, right? 250K to 500K checks.
Yeah.
I have a pretty good sense if I were a founder. I did this surveying of what founders are optimizing for at the pre-seed, seed, Series A, right? The pre-seed and seed was very much like value add.
Yeah.
Recruiting, support, I think comms, really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm curious, when you first meet a founder and you're telling them about Coalition, what do they gravitate towards most?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. I think I've done a lot of learning on this because early on, I think I would try to pitch like the product, and we have this operator network, and we're going to connect you with active expertise. And it's like, it's a real thing, but it was like too abstract. And so at the end of the day, what I have learned is founders are saying yes to a person or to the people. And so really we just try to make it really clear, like, what's it like to actually work with us? After we invest, I tend to go deep with our founders on, like, are you ready to tell your story? Are we going to launch? Like, how do we do? And so I feel like I want to bring that energy to our interactions so they get a sense of what that's like. And then I have these 3 phenomenal partners who are full-time founders, operators, company builders, part-time investors.
Amazing.
And that's really easy for founders to grok as well. So if you are a healthcare startup and you see that Toyin Ajayi is a co-founder and GP at Coalition, she's the CEO of City Block Health as well, you instantly know how valuable she's going to be. Like, everything she's learned. I mean, City Block is worth over $6 billion this last valuation. Just like a massive success story. Toyin's physician turned founder, truly one of the most impressive people I've ever been up close to. And so it's like a very easy yes. And so I think in venture, it's very important to understand, pick the right game and like know what game you're playing. And for us, we didn't want to play the zero-sum game of like, oh, we need to take most of a round to hit our ownership percentage and lead deals. We're like, no, we need to be nimble. We want to get into every deal that we want to get into, and we want to make it really easy for founders to say yes to us. And so that's what we've done. That's how we've structured, how we work. 250 to 500K. Like, we can always get onto a cap table that we're excited about, and founders are excited about working with us. And so, to answer your question, founders are initially saying yes to like some subset of the 4 of us, but then we get to blow their minds with this amazing network that we have.
If you had to describe like the founder that you feel would benefit most from taking partnership with Coalition, who is that founder or co-founder?
Yeah, it's hard because we're not like some firms are, very sector focused or like very thesis driven. And we certainly have like sector level theses or like ideas that we're playing around with, but we're very intentionally generalist as a firm. I think that the founders we tend to gravitate towards and we're best positioned to support are ones that have like a deep why for what they're building. Like, we are looking for someone who is obsessed with the problem that they're solving. This is the only company they could build. There's a lot of like low-hanging fruit out there for the grabbing right now with this platform shift. And so it may sound like, of course, every founder has a deep why, but like, I think if you double click, there are a lot of people who are like, oh, this is a good business, I'm going to go build it. And we're really looking for people who connect deeply with the thing they're going after. It could be because of a lived experience, a mission they're on, a chip of their shoulder, whatever. We look for people who have some sort of unfair expertise or insight. So they really they know their customer. They know the pain point that they want to solve. They have an idea of the wedge and can be faster out of the gate. And we like maniacally competitive people. I just think like building today, you have to like kind of love the game and the speed of by which things are happening. I mean, everything is more competitive today than it was when I started my startup career. And I think there are people who thrive in that environment. So it's more a founder persona than it is like a specific type of startup. And then, we love to plug in ways that are very specific and tangible. Like, we're not here to tell you how to build your business or give you like general business advice. We're here to make things like a little bit easier at the edges.
I think the why is really important. There's definitely something in the air, and maybe it's just in the Bay. I've lived there and I spend most of my time there, but I feel like a lot of the smartest young people right now are really wanting to take a swing and start their own company, like much more so than 5 years ago, I would say. Are you feeling that too, or?
Yeah, well, I think the Bay is like its own phenomenon right now.
Fair.
But yes, I mean, I've seen jokes, and Gary Tan, please don't like blacklist me.
He already
from
blocked me.
Y Combinator, but like where it's like easier to get into Y Combinator is to get an entry level like software role, which I don't think is true. But I think like entrepreneurship is the new default for a lot of people, and that's really fun.
Yeah.
But what it does mean is there are a lot of people who are like kind of experimenting, and versus like they're like founders looking for an idea versus people like compelled to build something. And I'm not saying that like with broad strokes generationally, but I think because AI is so exciting and because technology can be used in so many interesting ways, there are a lot of people who are tinkering right now. And I think that's wonderful. It kind of reminds me of early days of like the mobile app ecosystem where like people were just building fun things to see what would happen. And there were like a lot of really ridiculous apps coming out then. So yeah, it's like a fun, there's a little bit of a gold rush mentality. I go to San Francisco and I feel like I'm like part of a fever dream. New York's a little bit more grounded, for better or worse. We invest into both ecosystems like pretty equally. So we get to have like a foot in each city.
Fair. I feel like I'm in New York once a month, honestly.
Yeah, well,
There's so much buzz
come here. This is fun.
Yeah, way better during the spring and fall.
Yeah. Now it's cold, so I'm suddenly questioning all my life choices today.
Yeah. Come on back to the Bay.
Yeah.
I want to talk about designing intentional cap tables.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting. When you look at a cap table for the first time, what stands out to you?
Yeah, I think, listen, fundraising is actually really hard despite how it might seem on Twitter, right? Like it's such a tale of like two worlds where there are some founders who are just like, they're raising like a Series C, like 2 months after their Series B and like gobs of capital. But for most people, it's hard. And so I think the thing I want to say first is like, whatever gets the job done so you can go back to building is great. But if you are lucky enough to have like the time and the network and the intentionality, I think we really love when founders are like looking around corners and thinking about what they're going to need next and what will be most useful beyond just the capital, right? Like venture's weird. We're all kind of like selling the same product, which is money.
Yep.
But with that come connections. With that comes expertise. And so you can tell when founders, especially like second-time founders, like the way they build their cap tables is so different than most first-time founders because they know how amazing it is to have aligned incentives with the people who are like, literally invested in your business. And so they're picking and choosing the people who will be helpful today, maybe like help me hire my founding engineers, but then also the people who will be useful and go to market and like maybe down the line regulatory or policy. And so when we invest in a company, we are often thinking, who are the best people we know who we could bring onto this cap table? And sometimes those are people from our operator network. Sometimes it's just from our broader network. Sometimes it's other small funds. Sometimes we're helping a founder find a lead. But I think like the best cap tables are like coalitions, diverse coalitions of people who are going to help you in so many different ways. And I would wish for every founder that they could have like the time and the capacity to like think about the structure in that way. The other thing I'll say, not to go off on a tangent, but I've just been running into this lately. I think it's also really important if you're raising from people who maybe are not like professional investors to make sure they understand the game of like angel investing, because so often it's the people who are the smallest checks who are the biggest thorn in people's sides. And so also like pre-qualify your investors, filter them, make sure they understand what they're getting into, because you don't want to have your smallest investor be the one who is asking the most of you.
I was just going to ask you for if you had any advice to founders as they think about their cap tables or choosing who's on it. You kind of hit that. But is there anything else in terms of like, are there any themes where you think founders tend to go wrong, or what do you think there?
Well, I will say like a lot of times, and again, you like the number one goal is to be done with fundraising so you can just refocus on building your company. But a lot of times the lead investor will make a bunch of intros, but those intros are oftentimes, not always, like designed to be intros that convert, right? Who's going to say yes really quickly versus something that's like tailored to the company. And so I would just say like push your leads. Who would be best for this? Who would be best for that? Versus just like their handful of people who they, frequently bring in alongside them. And then the other sort of more like abstract point I'll make is building something from scratch is so hard. Finding people who give you energy is everything. And I also have been thinking about this in the context of like, if AGI comes, what's even the value of humans? And like, I feel like energy is such a big thing. Like if it can be someone who helps, solve a problem with you or like dig into a part of the business where they have expertise and you don't, you walk away from that feeling more invigorated. It's one of the most powerful things you can get as an entrepreneur. Like so much of it is energy management. And so, yeah, find people who you're excited to call up when you need them.
I love that you said that. I'm not just making this up. Literally in the last month, 2 of the GPs that I'm working with right now, who I admire deeply, both brought up something similar to that effect. When thinking about the new partner, it's not just track, it's also energy, vibes, right? That does matter. It's something that's coming up, which I think is really interesting. I think you're the perfect person to speak about story.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
And narrative as a competitive advantage, specifically. So I'm curious, what should founders, if I, co-founder and we just named, we have a product we're really excited about. Like, what's your advice to these founders as they just are starting to build their companies on story and narrative?
Oh my gosh, I have so much advice, but maybe I'll start with the thing that I think most people miss, and it's very understandable when you're like living and breathing a company, you're building a product every day. People skip straight towards like what they're building and they forget to talk about the problem that they're solving. And I think so much of like what is going to be interesting to people outside your company is this first part. Like what is the state of the world today? Why does it suck? Why hasn't this problem been fixed before? And people are like, here's what we've built. Here are the features. And that's just like such a narrower audience. And so the beautiful thing about like marketing the problem or telling the story of the problem before telling the story of the solution is you can do that ahead of traction, right? Like you don't have to wait to have one of those crazy growth charts. Like you're helping people understand what's broken about the world today. And if you are the one who gets to be the person who explains that in a way that like clicks and resonates with people, you kind of own that category in a way that you're not going to be able to own it with traction for a while. And so that's the piece. I see it in decks too, where someone's like, we've built this thing. And I'm like, I want to understand, like, who is this for? Like, why has no one done this? Like the why now of a story is so powerful. And I think right now everyone's really lazy because like AI is the why now for so many things.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I think a lot of storytelling like is skipping the most important parts.
What do you think the difference between messaging and I saw this article that was speaking about like story market fit as a concept that I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
What's your distinction between those two? Or is there one?
Yeah, it's funny. Maybe this is just my like comms brain, but messaging to me feels like these are your talking points and it's meant to help guide. I feel like I'm getting a little spicier in my old age. And, when I was a comms person, I was like, here are the talking points. Now I'm like, throw away the talking points. Like talking points are a crutch for if you don't have clear thinking. And if you have clear thinking, you can just have a conversation and talk about something. And I think we're also in this moment where this is the most overused word in the world, but like authenticity really matters. And sometimes talking points can help like mask or sort of, hide authenticity. And so not to say, don't have messaging. I think that the exercise I encourage founders to do before they like get on a call with a reporter or make an announcement is actually just try to write their story down, right? Like
Smart.
what is, why am I building this? Like, who is this for? Like, what's the origin story? So like, and that's like messaging in a way.
Totally.
But then I think like, pull yourself out of that and have a conversation like a human.
I feel like a clown with my talking points.
No,
right
those
now.
aren't talking points. Those are guidelines. You get a pass.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I curious, like so you mentioned you're pretty broad in terms of like sectors and founders that you're backing. Is there a bias towards the first time founder or the second time founder for you?
Yeah, maybe just to clarify too, like we try to invest where we have an information edge. Oftentimes that information edge is at the sector level, right? So I have a partner who's building in healthcare. I have a partner who's building in enterprise AI. I have a partner who's building in home services. So we see a lot of really interesting deal flow from those sectors. And I think we also believe we'll be uniquely primed to like help to pick interesting ideas.
Totally.
And then also to support companies post-investment. But we could also have an information edge because we've known the founder for a while and it's through like a talent network we're a part of. And so I would say, you know, like 80% of the companies we back will be in categories where like the four of us have built companies. And that's like a pretty broad, we all have very different sector backgrounds. It's a pretty broad universe. And then like the 20% will be, you know, because we knew this founder and we had to back them, you know, and we got smart enough to be able to do that. We have a total blend of first and second time founders in our portfolio. So I am always fascinated by people who have like, you know, their whole thesis is we back like second time founders. Yep. I get why they do that. It's fun to watch like, you know, how repeat founders like skip a lot of parts of company building because they've done them before, right? There's like a little bit of a cheat code. One thing we think about a lot and we've been coming back to is like, how much does expertise matter in this moment, right? Like especially in the early days of the early years of the AI wave, expertise mattered a ton, right?
Totally.
Like all of the people innovating in AI were like researchers and PhDs. And now we're starting to see people come in and build in like AI native ways that doesn't necessarily require expertise in AI on the technology side. And even like parts of building technology are becoming commoditized. We still think expertise really matters when it comes to the customer and the problem. Like there needs to be some real insight there. And so sometimes a repeat founder, especially if they're building in the same industry or an adjacent industry, does have an advantage there, but maybe they have a disadvantage in that they want to do it the same way as they did it before. So it's, you know, we don't have like a preference. We like having a portfolio where both those perspectives can live, and maybe there can be some like learning across those two groups.
And for what it's worth, I mean, if I'm a founder right now, you know, I think the idea of having someone on my cap table, extremely early innings, who can help shape how I think about the narrative, the story, right? I think that's so valuable because there's so much noise right now.
And you said it the right way, like help shape. I am not coming up with anyone's story, right? Like the story belongs to the founder. The story is the vision. Like the story is the company.
Yep.
But I do think it is really helpful to have someone who is both on your extended team, but is not living it day to day, who can help you pressure test. Because again, it's really hard. Actually, I remember I struggled so much when we first like publicly announced Coalition in June of 2022. I was like, oh, I have this new level of empathy. Like it was so hard to tell our story because I was so deep in it. And there were like all these parts that were like not fully baked yet or not obvious. And so I think it's really important to have people outside your company working with you on that, who can both help with the narrative itself. And then I can also help, like, do you want to pitch a reporter? Should we do that? Like, do you want me to, like, let's work on your, like, post around this? I've connected founders with right now making videos around launches and fundraisers, all the rage. Like, there's so many different ways to bring a story to life. And so I can help on those parts too. And my goal is always to teach a founder to fish versus, like, do it for them. And oftentimes I can save them a lot of money, like by not having them pay like an agency or someone to do it. Because that's the early stage. It's really hard to work with agencies.
And the delta on just like agencies are, I think I used 6 before I found Matt.
Oh, yeah.
And Manhattan Lab, shout out. And I'm very happy. So
This
I think
is great. I'm
it's
into
great,
it.
right? It's like a very cool room.
It's very cool. I'm not leaving.
Yeah, we're hanging out. So staying on the advice thread a little bit, the reporter piece you'd mentioned.
Yeah.
When is it appropriate, and when should founders try to not take the call?
It's so funny. I feel like, so we're in this like go direct era, right? And I think there are lots of good parts of go direct. Like I actually think it's really important that you own your story and you tell your story and you tell it directly to the audiences who matter most. I think what we sometimes like skip over is that that's very hard to do. That requires having your own channels for distribution, requires being good at that. Like not everyone is like editorial in how they think about things. And when I talked about how it's important to tell the story of the problem and not just the solution, a lot of times reporters were helping to add that context in for founders, right? Who were like pitching them on their launch announcements or their fundraisers. And now founders are doing it themselves. So I think we really do lose something when we only go direct. And for the most part, reporters are definitely more skeptical about tech than they were when I started my career. When I was at Box, startups were the underdogs. Yep. Like, in general, the like tech trade press was like rooting for startups. And this is a different dynamic today, but reporters are rarely out to destroy early stage startups, right? They might be a little bit of like a watchdog for super growth stage companies, or they might be questioning the valuations once they get super insane. But for the most part, if you're someone who's launching something and, you have a important problem you're solving and a product that you've built, the hardest thing is just going to get a reporter to pay attention, not that they're going to cancel your startup. And so I do think working with reporters is smart if you can do it. It's just hard to cut through the noise. Yep. I mean, if you think about the news cycles in tech right now, like the hyperscalers are sucking up so much oxygen. When is there a week where like OpenAI or Anthropic or Cursor don't have like a new crazy funding round or product release? And so the tech press, they're pulled in a lot of directions, and their job is often to cover the stories that matter most. You have to do a lot more work to convince a reporter that actually this like $2 million pre-seed fundraise and a company coming out of stealth is an important story. But that's why the quality of the story really matters, because if you've done a good job of explaining like, why is this problem so important? Why can we finally solve it? That's a lot easier to sell a reporter on than like, hey, here's this thing I built and we have like, a few design partners.
Totally. I would imagine, Box, Social Cap, Glossier, now Coalition, you probably have a good line in with the reporters that you like to go to.
I mean, I definitely have reporters I love working with. There's a lot of turnover in the media ecosystem. And so I also have to be in like relationship building mode myself. But, just like with investors, reporters will respond to like a good cold pitch.
Yeah.
The bar is very low. So, if you understand what they're interested in, you understand what, stories they think are important for their audience, you can at least get a response. So I'm cold pitching with the rest of them. And yes, also going to people I've known for years.
Yeah, exactly. The bar is low, and I'm grateful for the low bar, honestly, because I think people that really care, it shows up, and like I take that call all the time, right?
Yeah. I love a good cold pitch. Also, I will say like there's a low bar for storytelling in general right now. Like I think we're in this very sloppy era of storytelling where like the primary industry stories are like the 0 to 100 million ARR growth charts, the like 996 hustle culture. Like very few people are telling like thoughtful or like inspiring stories about what the future could and should be. And I think a lot of that is because like AI is exciting and things are moving quickly, and like these growth stories turn into massive funding rounds, which then attract more funding, and it just feels like those are the stories that matter.
Totally.
But I really do think that they're starting to get a little old. Now, obviously, if any of my companies get to 100 million in ARR, I will be very proud and I will be retweeting those stories. But I think when it comes to reaching people who are outside your like employees, cap tables, peers, like we have to tell bigger and more important stories, because just like any one startup is a story about the future, like technology industry, our job is to tell like the world what is coming in the future. And I think we're doing like a pretty poor job of that right now, in part because it's very hard to see. Like
Totally.
It's very nonlinear. AI is moving very quickly, but like no one quite knows, like, is AGI coming? What will happen when it does? But I think I'm excited for like a higher bar for storytelling.
100%. 100%. I want to use you while I have you for some advice.
Okay.
Okay. There are emerging managers right now who are just kicking off their first fundraise.
Yeah.
You had a successful raise for your fund one. You're actively deploying. I'm curious, any advice to the emerging manager starting a first raise? What would you advise yourself?
Well, I don't know how applicable this is to anyone outside of me, but I would have raised more. We raised $12.8 million for our first fund. We also did it at the end of Xerpe times. It was like a very fast fundraise. And I think we were, well, let's see how we can scale up from our angel and scout checks to, bigger positions on cap tables. Now knowing what I know, we're able to get those larger allocations and have a real scale our impact across the portfolio. And so I wish I had like raised more, because whatever you set for fund one, you're then going to have to explain that step function to fund two. And fund three and fund four. And so, think about, I guess maybe the way I should frame this as advice is when you're raising your fund one, you're also raising your fund 2, 3, 4.
Interesting.
If you decide you're building a firm and not just managing a fund. And so think about what's going to help you get to where you want to go versus just like taking it as it comes. And I was very much, I was like, oh, this is great. Like, let's do this. We originally set out to raise 8 million. I'm glad we were really oversubscribed because, we got to put that money to work, and I wish we'd had even more.
Amazing. So when I have here, I did one reference here.
Oh.
The operator today who is really wanting to start angel investing.
Mm-hmm.
I think this transition of like operator to vent, it's hard to break through.
Yeah.
It's hard to break through.
Yeah.
What advice do you have to operators who maybe they've written one angel check into a friend, but they want to start getting really serious about investing?
Yeah. Well, if you have the capital to build an angel portfolio, I do think that is the best way, especially if you're senior, right? Because you're not going to go into like an associate role.
Right.
It's almost like if you're really senior, if you're shiny and you're a CEO, you can go get like a GP role somewhere.
Sure.
It's like venture is brand. And if you have brand, yay. But if you're like a senior operator and you have like, an amazing network and real value to add to cap tables, if you can angel invest or even scout invest, that's a great way to do it. I would say, like, just like I said, when you're raising your fund one, think about like where you want to be with fund 2, 3, 4. When you're angel investing, think about the portfolio you're building. And so don't just do like one deal at a time. Be like, okay, I'm carving out this capital to invest in 10 companies or 20 companies. And this is the pacing. I want to do this many deals a year. And if I'm going to do this many deals a year, here's how many deals I want to see. And like really approach it strategically. I was lucky to be invited to do, First Round has a program called Angel Track.
Interesting. How was that?
It was amazing. And they were very nice to let me in because I was already a fund manager. So there were like a couple of us like tiny fund manager spies in this group of world-class operator and founder angels. And a big part of what they do is help you think through how to have a little more structure around what you're doing. Because usually the people in this group, they have the network, they have brand, they have interesting expertise. But what they haven't done is think about investing from like more of a portfolio perspective. And so that's what I try to tell when people want to start angel investing. I'm like, great. Like, let's make sure you at least start with 10 deals because you want to give yourself a chance for power law. to kick in your favor, and you learn so much across a portfolio versus just a couple deals. It's very hard to know what to take away from those experiences.
So I started like asking, what's the gold standard for fellowship, for angel track, right? For programs that are set up with the intention to, bring operators and teach them how to invest or at least coach and train. And like absolute consensus was the first round angel track.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, they're also so generous with everything that they've learned. So they're not just like telling you, here's how to angel invest. There's like, here's everything we've learned in building first round, and like there's data, and there are all these. It was so cool. I like talk about like, I mean, we were talking about Thrive and General Catalyst seeding the next generation of funds. Like first round is an amazing ecosystem builder. And like, of course, like everyone in that program is going to want to share their investments with first round. And I think they've hired GPs out of the angel list cohort or angel track cohort. So it's a very cool program.
I love it. I also love AngelList.
Yeah, AngelList is great too.
Yep. All right. I think we're coming up on time. Just the last two questions, and they're going to be rapid fire.
Okay, sorry. I'll be quick.
The one company or product sitting outside of your portfolio today that you admire most.
Oh man. Admire most is like a high bar. Maybe I'll do this from a storytelling lens. Is that okay? Because like if it's product, I'm just like in ChatGPT all day, and that's such a boring answer.
Yep.
I think that Cursor is doing a really interesting job on storytelling. Like they're leaning into culture storytelling, employer brand. They don't have to. They have like the crazy growth trajectory, and so I really admire how they're building. I don't use Cursor. I'm not a developer, but I like how they're building their story.
I want to start using Cursor, honestly.
Yeah, apparently we can, even if we're not technical. But
I just heard
haven't gone there. Yeah.
Yeah, I just found that out. Last one. Who's an emerging manager that you really admire today? Ideally, like fund one or two that hasn't quite. It's still getting up.
Yeah, I think you always kind of like admire like the opposite of what you are, and there's this woman, Alexandria Lofsey, who has a firm called Home Team Ventures, which is investing in like construction tech, essentially, like anything that helps create more like affordable housing. And so there's materials stuff, there's software. She previously built a really successful nonprofit called New Story that builds housing like all over the world. And I just think the way they do such deep research, like her LP network are all in the industry, like we are generalists. And so I'm like, oh, that's like so sexy that she's so focused and thesis driven and has this like really, really thoughtful approach. So, and she's awesome. I got to know her through Kaufman Fellows, which is another like
exceptional network. I've met so many fantastic investors from Kaufman.
It's a great group of people.
That's an easy fun to get behind.
Yeah.
Ashley, thank you so much for coming on.
This was so
hanging
fun.
out with me.
Thank you for having me.
Stay warm.
All right. You too.
All right, cool.